good afternoon, everybody. Before I start, I'm going to wait for Linda to sit down. Hey, Linda. So I do want to start. This is Linda's third year as the chair of the Board of Governors, and she's the only chair of the Board of Governors that I've known. And I just want to say, as kind of the new guy, I really benefited, as I believe all of us do, from the wisdom and the grace, and especially the intelligence that she brings and the heart she brings to college sports and college athletics. Linda, thank you very much for doing such a great job of bringing me up, but most importantly, the work you do on behalf of student athletes. Now, 2 years ago, I attended this convention as incoming president, and I met many of you for the first time. Since then, I got in front of all 90 conference leadership groups once each year and met with student athletes from every division on the field, in the stands, and on campus. What I heard were three simultaneous truths. College sports are thriving, but also threatened, and change was long overdue. I say thriving because you all combined to provide $4 billion in academic aid. Student-athlete graduation rates are at all-time highs, better than their peers who don't play sports. And our surveys show that student-athletes enjoy their experience both on the field and in the classroom. Fan bases are growing, women's sports are taking off. It's all good. The threats come from endless litigation. I was a healthcare and government guy. I've been around a lot of litigation. Not like this. Attempts to force employment despite opposition from student-athlete leaders across all three divisions, and the pressures that coaches, ADs, and student-athletes face when it feels like there are no rules and no certainty. The message was clear: either make the necessary changes or someone else was going to make them for us. Now, to create a sustainable and equitable model for college sports, we focused on three key priorities. As a former basketball player, I like to think of these as a three-man weave. Each plays a critical role in getting us to the hoop. First, modernize our system to meet the needs of today's student-athlete. That means addressing the unique needs of student-athletes in revenue-generating sports at our largest universities, and continuing to support all other student-athletes and the academic mission that is core to everyone's success. Because remember, less than 1% will ever go pro. Second, invest. Continue to grow our championships, expand our digital footprint, and position the NCAA for success in the changing world of sports entertainment. Accelerate the rising success of women's sports and assist our member institutions in growing all sports. Third, engage our communities by telling our story in new ways, and partner with Congress to stabilize our future by finding common ground with stakeholders across the country. Now, thanks to all of you and to many of your colleagues back on campus, we've made a ton of progress in all of these areas, but there is much more that needs to be done. Modernizing the model had to happen. For years, the needs of student-athletes were evolving faster than the support they received, and that had to change. Now, the Division I board took a huge step in delivering change by mandating the core guarantees: guaranteed scholarships, guaranteed time to complete a degree, tutoring and financial literacy, and enhanced health and wellness resources, all required. This was a massive statement to deliver what today's student-athletes need to study and compete with their physical and mental health top of mind. We also launched the post-eligibility health insurance program for all three divisions, and it is now operating and actually paying claims. Every student-athlete can get treatment for athletic injuries for 2 years after leaving school. That was a big win for us all. Student-athletes are also grappling with emerging issues and opportunities that are new to this generation. Let's talk about sports betting, if we have to. Millions of students are dealing with all those people who are betting on college athletes. The verbal and online abuse being sent their way is unacceptable. We're doing everything we can to ensure competitive integrity on the field while protecting student athletes from harassment off it. We engaged industry leaders to monitor games and online harassment. We made our penalties more flexible to support young people who may have just made a mistake, and we're gathering more data than ever before about how student athletes are impacted. We're advocating for them in state houses across the country, and we're getting results. We're also addressing the unique needs of student athletes in revenue-generating sports at our largest institutions. It's clear that student athletes whose programs generate significant revenue should be able to benefit more from the value that they help create. Now, some people were surprised when I said this out loud for the first time about 14 months ago. But a year later, we're close to making this happen. The landmark settlement that Linda talked about, which was granted preliminary approval before a final decision is issued this spring, is an enormous step forward in ushering in a new era of college sports. And when I said change was long overdue, this is what I was talking about. I realize it comes with turbulence. Making such a massive transition was never going to be easy. But the settlement is the right thing for student athletes, and it's also the right thing for college sports for several reasons. It will allow universities that choose to do so to provide up to approximately $20 million annually directly to student athletes in D1. This will bring stability to an environment that everyone agrees desperately needs it. It will replace scholarship limits with roster limits, resulting in significantly more scholarship opportunities. And it enables all sports to thrive by making new spending discretionary. Yeah, there's a lot more to do here, but we've already started to see some of the payoff. Many D1 schools have already announced big increases in scholarship opportunities as a result. 150 new opportunities at Clemson, and almost 100 at Ohio State, and many, many more. Now, going forward, the NCAA owns pieces of the rulemaking here, and the autonomy conferences own others. I'm confident that we can come through this stronger, more efficient, and more transparent than we've been before. Many people call the current environment the Wild West, and they're right. And the settlement puts the relationship back where it belongs between the student athlete and the school he or she chooses to attend. Now, with respect to the future and investing, we know that NCAA championships work. They represent incredible athletic achievement, dreams coming true, and extraordinary drama. North Central fighting their way back to the Stag Bowl and winning it this time. The University of Vermont, New England, stunning the country with an overtime win in the College Cup. Time and time again, the drama was on display throughout the course of the fall season. The men's and women's basketball tournaments are thriving, and we're committed to ensuring that that remains the case for a very long time. Meanwhile, interest in our other championships is surging. Across all three divisions, there is tremendous potential for growth. But we had to get our own house in order at the national office to realize these opportunities. And thanks to a lot of hard work by a lot of people, the NCAA's financial situation is very strong. The association is now debt-free for the first time in decades. The cost of our core operations of the national office declined from 16% of revenue to 12% of revenue over the past 2 years. We did that by controlling costs, renegotiating contracts, and ending programs that weren't delivering for members or student athletes. This year, we will generate nearly $100 million more in ticket sales than we planned for in fiscal '23. That's a 48% increase. TV revenue is up $180 million. a 19% increase over the same period of time. This has allowed us to invest more in the student-athlete championship experience, do more for D1 members, and increase our support for D2 and D3 members. These financial reforms also make it possible, as Linda mentioned, for the national office to absorb over 40% of the settlement payments, a $1.2 billion commitment over the next 10 years. Now, if the settlement's approved in the spring, the national office will pay at least $120 million of the $280 million price tag in year one. And we'll continue to work hard between now and then to do more to reduce the cost to the rest of the D1 membership. I know schools are facing pressures financially, and that's why we work so hard to cut our costs, drive new growth, reduce impacts, and do everything we could to preserve the student-athlete experience. It's also why we've been building that fan database. I said last year at our conference that we wanted to have 10 million people in that database by today. We've hit 13 million, and it's still growing. And this year, going forward, we're rolling out an extensive data sharing initiative with our members, allowing us to exchange and gain insights, such as teams' fan support and their geographic locations, and other information that can help ensure that we give them the information they need to find and support you and your schools. Together, we can increase exposure for regular and postseason events, enhance fans' experience with NCAA.com, and continue to grow together. Now, no story's been more significant over the last 2 years than the growth in women's sports. And we have the pioneers behind Title IX to thank for that. But here are just a few highlights. Volleyball, softball, and soccer all saw massive growth. The D1 Volleyball Championship in Louisville broke the old attendance record during the semifinals, and then went out and broke the new record again 2 days later in the finals. And this was the first time two women coaches met in the finals. Louisville's Danny Busboom Kelly and Penn State's Katie Schumacher-Cawley, making history in a fast-growing sport that's sure to make a lot more. And because of the incredible ratings for women's basketball, the media rights value of the championship went up by 6 times its original value when we renegotiated it. And hopefully, with your support later during this convention, we will begin to pay out performance units on our women's basketball championship. This has been a long time coming, and we sit on the shoulders of so many who came before us. But it's also a moment. It's a milestone moment, and it's one that we will expand on for years to come. And that Women's Basketball Fund is just one of many of the positive changes underway in college sports. But one of the main changes we face is that college sports are too frequently misunderstood and defined by critics with narrow agendas. The NCAA is all of you. It's 1,100 schools, cornerstones of your communities, over 500,000 current student athletes, and the millions more who carry with them invaluable experiences now that their playing days are over. It's $4 billion in scholarship support, $4 billion in opportunities for young people to get a leg up as they launch their careers. And it's a uniquely American enterprise. There's nothing like it anywhere else, and it is the envy of the world's athletic community. Together with one voice, we need to reach new audiences with these truths. And we need to show people what's at stake. To do that, the NCAA is telling our story in bigger and bolder ways. There was no prouder moment for college sports in 2024 than the performance of so many college athletes turned Olympians in Paris. We launched the Olympians Made Here campaign before that, and it ran all the time throughout the course of those wonderful events. And that was so that millions following the games on TV or online understood the essential role the NCAA plays for Team USA. The NCAA is also tapping our broadcast agreements to educate millions of viewers about the changes we're making to support today's student athletes. You can tell this story too. The more we all do, the brighter the outlook. And doing so is essential to our future and our work with Congress. Now, when I took this job, the message I heard from Congress was clear. Fix what you control first. Since then, we've modernized college sports to meet the needs of today's student athletes. But we cannot solve every threat alone. On 3 issues, only Congress can provide stability for student athletes and schools. First, side with student athlete leaders and affirm that they are not employees. Second, protect our ability to set reasonable rules without constant litigation. And third, create a nationwide level playing field and not 30+ different state laws. Now, each of you educating your members of Congress about these 3 issues is imperative. And honestly, over the last couple years, I have seen your work change the narrative in DC. I've heard from many elected officials that understanding the role sports plays at HBCUs dramatically altered their perspective and their point of view. We can all win if we speak up. I mean, don't forget, you are their constituents. They need to hear from you about the changes we're making and why the NCAA faces challenges that are equally important to them and to the folks who live and work in their districts. You know, last year I met a women's field hockey player at St. Anselm College who was helping to run the D2 championships. Colleen and I took a photo and we talked about the tournament and we talked about the school. A year later, I got an email from her beaming with pride. She told me how she went from running the scorer's table last year to winning the whole thing this year. Go Hawks, national champions. She described what set her team apart: their routines, their friendship, their support system. She also pointed out that everybody back on campus was drooling over the watches they got. She said her team was the first team in school history to win a natty, ever. And she told me how the NCAA and her sport gave her teammates and friends. Friends that she depended on. Friends that pushed her to be her true self, her best self, and how that made her a better person. I was grinning like I just won a national championship as I read this email. We have a lot of challenges. There's no question about that. But we're also lucky to be here in this moment. I know change is hard. If it wasn't, I wouldn't be here and it wouldn't matter. But stories like Colleen's make it so worth the effort. She and her fellow student athletes are why we must modernize, must invest, and must engage now. Now, I know this will take collaboration, compromise, and a willingness to embrace change. Something many of our student athletes are actually pretty good at. And like a good 3-man weave, if we get this right, it'll end with a lot of points on the board. Thanks very much for being with us, and I look forward to continue to push this agenda forward in 2025. Thank you.